Once upon a time, a multiplayer first-person shooter was released, and nobody ever imagined that one day it would become one of the most popular games of all time, known as Overwatch. But how did Overwatch become such a popular game? And why do people keep auto-picking Widowmaker when they don't even know how to play her? Is Overwatch a Titan's descent? And is Tracer a ghost? Did Widowmaker have a model error? And is it true that Zarya is inspired by a Blizzard employee? And is there really a war to make the Omnics extinct? And why are you so proud of being a Hanzo main? And is Jeff Kaplan really a secret character that you can play in the game after you find all the Easter eggs?
It's time for me to answer all these questions and more, since this is ASMR. Aaron, back at it again with another daily video to help you relax. So lay back and enjoy the ride. I hope this read helps you get you through your day, or even better, I hope this video helps you gently fall asleep. I can't wait to get started.
This is the tale of Overwatch.
Overwatch is a team-based multiplayer first-person shooter developed and published by Blizzard Entertainment. Described as a hero shooter, Overwatch assigns players into 2 teams of 6, with each player selecting from a roster of over 30 characters known as heroes, each with a unique style of play that is divided into 3 general roles that fit their purpose. Players on a team work together to secure and defend control points on a map, or escort a payload across the map in a limited amount of time. Players gain cosmetic rewards that do not affect gameplay, such as character skins and victory poses, as they play the game. The game was initially launched with only casual play, but a competitive ranked mode, various arcade game modes, and a player customizable server browser were added after release. Additionally, Blizzard has added new characters, maps, and game modes post-release, all free of charge, with the only additional cost to players being optional loot boxes to earn cosmetic items. It was released for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Windows in May 2016, and Nintendo Switch in October 2019. Overwatch is Blizzard's 4th major franchise and came about following the 2014 cancellation of the ambitious, massively multiplayer online role-playing game Titan. A portion of the Titan team came up with the concept of Overwatch. Based on the success of team-based first-person shooters like Team Fortress 2 and the popularity of multiplayer online battle arena games, creating a hero-based shooter that emphasized teamwork. Some elements of Overwatch borrow assets and concepts from the cancelled Titan project. After establishing the narrative of an optimistic near-future Earth setting after a global crisis, the developers aimed to create a diverse cast of heroes that span genders and ethnicities as part of this setting. Significant time is spent adjusting the balance of the characters, making sure that new players would still be able to have fun, while skilled players would present each other with a challenge. Overwatch was unveiled at the 2014 BlizzCon event and was in a closed beta form late 2015 through early 2016. An open beta before release drew in nearly 10 million players. The release of the game was promoted with short animated videos to introduce the narrative and characters. Overwatch received universal acclaim from critics who praised the game for its accessibility, diverse appeal of its hero characters, bright cartoonish art style, and enjoyable gameplay. Blizzard reported over $1 billion in revenue during the first year of its release and had more than 50 million players after 3 years. Overwatch is considered to be among the greatest video games of all time, receiving numerous Game of the Year awards and other accolades. The game is also a popular esport, with Blizzard funding and producing the global Overwatch League. A sequel, Overwatch 2, was announced in 2019 and will include new player versus environment cooperative multiplayer modes. In addition, it will have a shared competitive multiplayer environment, allowing players of both games to play against each other. While it will be sold as a separate game, all new heroes, maps and competitive game modes will also exist in Overwatch. Overwatch is an online team-based game generally played as a first-person shooter. The game features several different game modes, principally designed around squad-based combat with 2 opposing teams of 6 players each. Players select one of over 24 pre-made hero characters from one of 3 class types: damage heroes, that deal most of the damage to attack or defend control points; tank heroes, that can absorb a large amount of damage; and support heroes, that provide healing or other buffs for their teammates. Each hero has a unique skill kit, defining their intrinsic attributes like health points and running speed, their primary attacks, several active and passive skills, and an ultimate ability that can only be used after it has been charged through dealing damage to enemies and healing allies. Players can change their hero during the course of a match, as a goal of Overwatch's design was to encourage dynamic team compositions that adapt to the situation. The game's genre has been described by some journalists as a hero shooter due to its design around specific heroes and classes. The game features game modes for casual play, competitive ranked play, and for supporting esport competitions, including Blizzard's Overwatch League. These modes, generally, are centered around sequentially securing control of points on the map, or escorting a payload between points on the map, with one team attacking while the other defends. Other modes set aside for casual matches include solo and team deathmatch, capture the flag, and unique modes run during various seasonal events. More recent updates have enabled users to craft their own game modes with a limited set of scripting tools. New characters and maps have also been added regularly to the game's site launch, expanding the original hero roster from the 21st to the 31st by... New characters and maps have also been added regularly to the game since launch, expanding the original hero roster from 21 to 31 by August 2019. Regardless of winning or losing a match, players gain experience towards a player level, and on gaining a new level, receive loot boxes that contain cosmetic items that they can use to customize the appearance of the hero characters, but otherwise does not affect gameplay. Loot boxes can also be purchased through microtransactions. The backstory to Overwatch is described through the animated shorts and other information distributed by Blizzard in promoting the game. Overwatch is set 60 years into the future of a fictionalized Earth, 30 years after the resolution of what is known as the Omnic Crisis. Before the Omnic Crisis, humanity had been in a golden age of prosperity and technology development. Humans developed robots with artificial intelligence called Omnics, which were put to use to achieve economic equality, and began to be treated as people in their own right. The Omnic crisis began when the worldwide automated Omnium facilities that produce them started producing a series of lethal hostile robots that attacked humankind. Initially, individual countries responded with various programs. The United States developed its Soldier Enhancement Program to produce elite fighters, for example, while Germany assembled the Nightlight Crusaders. When individual countries' efforts failed to ward off the Omnics, the United Nations quickly formed Overwatch, an international task force combining these individual programs to combat this threat and restore order. 2 veteran soldiers from the Soldier Enhancement Program were put in charge of Overwatch, Gabriel Reyes and Jack Morrison. Though Overwatch successfully quelled the robotic uprising and brought many talented individuals to the forefront, a rift developed between Reyes and Morrison became the leader of Overwatch while Reyes took charge of Blackwatch, Overwatch's covert operations division, fighting terrorist organizations like Talon, a group that appears to be trying to start a second Omnic crisis, and Null Sector, a group of Omnics that revolted against a society that pursued. Though Overwatch successfully quelled the robotic uprising and brought many talented individuals to the forefront, a rift developed between Reyes and Morrison became the leader of Overwatch, while Reyes took charge of Blackwatch, Overwatch's covert operations division, fighting terrorist organizations like Talon, a group that appears to be trying to start a second Omnic crisis, and Null Sector, a group of Omnics that revolted against a society that persecuted Omnics following the first crisis. Overwatch continued to maintain peace across the world for several decades in what came to be called the Overwatch generation, as the team gained more members, but the rift between Morrison and Reyes intensified. Several allegations of wrongdoing and failures were levelled at Overwatch, leading to a public outcry against the organisation and infighting between its members, prompting the UN to investigate the situation. During this, an explosion destroyed Overwatch's headquarters in Switzerland, purportedly killing Morrison and Reyes among others. The UN passed the Petrus Act, which dismantled Overwatch and forbade any Overwatch-type activity. Overwatch is set 6 years after the Petrus Act. Without Overwatch, corporations have started to take over, fighting and terrorism have broken out in parts of the globe, and there are signs of a second Omnic crisis occurring in Russia. A former member of Overwatch, the intelligent guerrilla Winston, decides to begin reforming Overwatch to protect the peace once again despite the Petrus Act, with the team members recruiting old friends and gaining new allies in their fight. Thus it is also revealed that Reyes and Morrison were not killed in the explosion, that in fact was the result of a battle between them. Morrison became a masked vigilante known as Soldier 76, who is trying to uncover the reasons why Overwatch was shut down, while Reyes joined Talon and became Reaper, a terrorist disguised as Death. Overwatch came about in the aftermath of Blizzard's decision to cancel the massively multiplayer online role-playing game Titan in 2013, a project that had been in development for about 7 years. While most others assigned to the project were transferred to other departments within Blizzard, a small team of about 40 people, led by director Jeff Kaplan, were tasked to come up with a new concept for a game in a few months. After some brainstorming, they came onto the idea of a hero team-based shooter, building upon the success of games like Team Fortress 2 and multiplayer online battle arenas. They started with assets developed for Titan to demonstrate the proof of concept, and were greenlit to build out the full game, the first new intellectual property that Blizzard had developed since StarCraft. The intra-company experience of Titan's cancellation served to help drive the narrative and setting. They created an optimistic vision of the near future, some decades following the Omnic crisis, and the formation and collapse of the peacekeeping Overwatch group. This allowed them to create a diverse cast of characters, including non-human ones and colourful settings from around the globe. The Overwatch team continues to support the game through free updates, the introduction of new characters, maps, game modes, cosmetic items, seasonal events, and external media to support the game's narrative, as well as continuously tuning how the individual heroes play by monitoring meta-game statistics and user feedback. While the developers were aiming to avoid sexualization of the characters, there was some criticism of the female characters of the game during its development. In February 2015, Anita Sarkeesian commented on the lack of diversity in the female heroes' body types from the game's first 12 revealed characters, while Nathan Grayson of Kotaku remarked that Overwatch's women are mostly super slim and clad in catsuits. In March 2015, the development team revealed a new character, Zarya, who is a female Russian bodybuilder with a muscular body and pledged commitment to diversity. Following promotional images featuring the female character Tracer in March 2016, a thread on Blizzard's official forums drew attention to one of Tracer's victory poses, which was criticised by a user as out of character and over-sexualised. Kaplan apologised for the pose, stating, "The last thing we want to do is make someone feel uncomfortable, underappreciated or misrepresented," and confirmed that Blizzard planned to replace the pose. Kaplan's response drew mixed reactions from the gaming community, with many claiming Blizzard had foregone its creative control over the game and censored its content to placate one offended user, while others praised Blizzard's willingness to listen to the community and adhere to standards for portraying a character according to their personality. Kaplan later stated that the team was already unsure of the pose and was thinking of changing it. The following week, a replacement pose was released, although it was noted to be similar to the original pose. The replacement pose was alleged to be influenced by Billy DeVore's cheesecake pin-up art. The pose was replaced during the game's beta period. Following the game's release, some of the alternative outfits for characters had come under criticism for using cultural stereotypes, such as a Native American headdress option for the character of Farah, who seemed to be primarily of Egyptian origin. Kaplan noted that they had considered if these outfits were appropriate and believed they were respecting the cultures of the characters they had created and would make necessary changes if they felt they were valid concerns. Kaplan commented that many players have responded positively to these outfits and feel they fit in appropriately with Kaplan commented that many players have responded positively to these outfits and feel they fit in appropriately with the idealized version of Earth. Later game development showed that Farah was set out as a half Egyptian, half Native American character, making such outfits appropriate in hindsight. In July 2016, the president of the Universal Society of Hinduism, Rajan Zed, urged Blizzard to remove 2 of Symmetra's hero cosmetic items from the game since they could be seen as inappropriate and not accurate towards the beliefs and practices of Hinduism. In Hinduism, devotees put their destinies in the hands of their gods and goddesses. This is a stark contrast to how he believes they are portrayed within the game. Zed has in the past commented on other video game depictions of Hindu-inspired gods, such as in the multiplayer online battle arena game. Zed has in the past commented on other video game depictions of Hindu-inspired gods, such as in the multiplayer online battle arena game Smite. In Overwatch's Asia servers, there were problems with numerous players using cheats tied to the growing number of younger players using PC bangs in South Korea, that allow them to play Overwatch on an inexpensive hourly rate rather than purchasing the game. As these players do not need permanent accounts, they can use disposable Battle.net accounts and employ game hacks without repercussions. And if that account is banned, they can quickly make another and continue playing. Blizzard continues to block these accounts at a rate of thousands per day, but have not been able to find a more permanent solution. Subsequently, Blizzard announced that players from South Korea would be required to log into a Battle.net account to play the game from February 2017 onward, which requires a difficult-to-spoof resident registration number, among other unique information, which Blizzard believes would help to alleviate the problem. As to maintain a fair competitive field on consoles, Blizzard has spoken out against the use of input converters that would allow console players to use keyboard mouse controllers, believing this gives an advantage to players that can afford the converter. Some players have criticised the ability to use these converters, as players with them often populate the top of the competitive ranking ladders. Though Blizzard has appealed to Sony and Microsoft to either prevent such converters or to detect when such converters are used as to be able to segregate players into servers based on this, disabled players have spoken out against such action, as many need to use such converters to play the game on consoles lacking the ability to use a normal controller. After a year from its release, journalists observed that the player community was becoming more toxic, disrupting the enjoyment of playing the game. It was believed this came from the nature of the game that requires teamwork, and when teammates see players unwilling to switch to different heroes to balance the team or otherwise play for individual gains, this would cause the teammates to become angry and lash out at the player, become griefers and throw the match, or other harmful behaviour that would spread over time, particularly in the game's competitive mode. Players are able to report malicious users within game tools, and Blizzard can ban players for egregious actions, but they do not attempt to segregate out bad actors from the larger pool, a method used by other developers in multiplayer games, instead keeping an inclusive community for all non-banned players, which is believed to contribute to the growing toxicity. Kaplan said in September 2017 in an update that Blizzard was very well aware of the problem and have worked to improve their in-game player behaviour reporting tools to help combat the toxicity. But because they have had to put greater effort into this, they are distracted from developing new features and content for the game. Kaplan urged the community to consider how they can improve individually and as a whole to help combat the situation. In November 2017, the Belgian Gaming Commission announced that it was investigating Overwatch, alongside Star Wars Battlefront 2, to determine whether loot boxes constituted unlicensed gambling. Many Asian and European countries view loot boxes as a form of gambling and have since decided to make them illegal for companies to sell directly to their consumers in their games. Blizzard has chosen to work with these regions to follow their gambling laws while staying true to their microtransaction-focused business model. Within China, Blizzard has allowed their players to purchase in-game currency and receive loot boxes as a gift. In addition to this loot box change, China has required Blizzard to publicly disclose the exact odds of winning each tier of item within said loot box. While initially loot boxes were not seen as gambling within the United States, the US Federal Trade Commission has recently decided to investigate the legality of the projected soon-to-be $50 billion industry of microtransactions. Even though Blizzard failed to accomplish their dream of making Titan the most complex MMO ever created, the legacy has not been lost, but continued through Overwatch. The name is one of the first things that was revived. In the original project, the Overwatch being an elite task force. Also, some of the maps found in the actual shooter have been a part of Titan. The hero Tracer is yet another reminiscence that managed to stay alive and continue as a character in Blizzard's new FPS. As we can see, all the efforts they put into the development of Titan haven't been in vain. Tracer suffered from a disorder known as chronal dissociation. This anomaly desynchronized her molecules from the flow of time, so her friend Winston fashioned a device that allows her to anchor in the present while still letting her control the disassociation. This is the reason why Tracer is able to manipulate the timeline and jump in and out of it at will. Because of this inconsistency, she can be considered a living ghost who is not entirely present in either of the time periods she dwells in. Because of this inconsistency, she can be considered a living ghost who is not entirely present in either of the time periods she dwells in at a certain point. In the original video that presents Widowmaker's abilities, there was an error that made her buttocks expand in size once her ability was activated. However, in the actual game, this glitch doesn't appear anymore since Blizzard managed to eliminate it. Having been in the public eye for over-sexualizing female characters, they really did a number on making Widowmaker's behind appear bigger every time she activated one of her powers. At a lecture given at the NYU, Anita Sarkeesian raised awareness about the fact that the female characters from Overwatch lack in body diversity. While their male counterparts come in all costumes and body builds, the feminine representatives are simply too similar and overly sexualized. As a response to this remark, Blizzard released an official message saying they will fix this in the future and subsequently released the new hero, Zarya, a pink-haired bodybuilder inspired by their character designer Tamara. As you see, the resemblance is uncanny. Overwatch won numerous awards in 2016, including being named Game of the Year at the Game Awards 2016, DICE Awards and Game Developers' Choice Awards, as well as several awards and nominations highlighting its game direction, and as a leading multiplayer game. Several publications including IGN, GameSpot, Game Revolution, EGM Now, Games TM, The Escapist, Game Informer and Eurogamer named Overwatch the best game of 2016, receiving 102 Game of the Year awards across critics and reader polls. Giant Bomb gave it the awards for Best Debut and Best Multiplayer and put it in third place for Game of the Year. Polygon and Slant Magazine also put the game in third place for Game of the Year, while PC Gamer gave it the award for Best Multiplayer. Besides Game of the Year, The Escapist also gave it the awards for Best Shooter and Multiplayer. Game Informer also gave it the awards for Best Competitive Multiplayer and Best Shooter. At IGN's Best of 2016 awards, the game also won the awards for Best Shooter, Best Esports Game, Best Multiplayer, and Best PC Game of the Year. In IGN's Best of 2017 awards, the game won the People's Choice Award for Best Spectator Game, while Game Informer gave it the award for Best Shooter as Service in their 2017 Shooter of the Year Awards. In the years since its release, Overwatch has continued to be nominated and awarded for its strength as an esports game, as well as the ongoing content added to the title. And so ends the tale of the popular multiplayer shooter game Overwatch, which continues to be played by millions of fans across the world.